Common Denominator by John D. MacDonald. Read for you by Elaine Frank. When Scout Group 40 flickered back across half the galaxy with a complete culture study of a Class 7 civilization on 3 planets of Argus 10, the Bureau of Stellar Defense, or BSD, had, of course, a priority claim on all data. Class 7s were rare and of high potential danger, so all personnel of Group 40 were placed in tight quarantine during the 30 days required for a detailed analysis of the thousands of film spools. News of the contact leaked out, and professional alarmists predicted dire things on the news screens of the 3 home planets of Sol. A retired admiral of the Space Navy published an article in which he stated bitterly that the fleet had been weakened by 20 years of softness in high places. On the 31st day, BSD reported to System President Mize that the inhabitants of the 3 planets of Argus 10 constituted no threat, that there was no military necessity for alarm, that approval of a commerce treaty was recommended, that all data was being turned over to the Bureau of Stellar Trade and Economy, or BSTE, for analysis, that personnel of Scout Group 40 was being given 60 days leave before reassignment. BSTE released film to all commercial networks at once, and visions of slavering, oily monsters disappeared from the imagination of mankind. The Argonauts, as they came to be called, were pleasantly similar to mankind. It was additional proof that only in the rarest instance was the life apex on any planet in the home galaxy an abrupt divergence from the human form. The homogeneousness of planet elements throughout the galaxy made homogeneousness of life apex almost a truism. The bipedal, oxygen-breathing vertebrate with opposing thumb seemed best suited for survival. It was evident that with training, the average Argonaut could pass almost unnoticed in the solar system. The flesh tones were brightly pink, like that of a sunburned human. Cranial hair was uniformly taffy yellow. They were heavier and more fleshy than humans. Their women had a pronounced Rubens look, a warm, moist, rosy, comfortable look. Everyone remarked on the placidity and contentment of facial expressions, by human standards. The inevitable comparison was made. The Argonauts looked like a race of inn and beer garden proprietors in the Bavarian Alps. With leather pants to slap, stein lids to click, feathers in Tyrolean hats, and peasant skirts on their women, they would represent a culture and a way of life that had been missing from Earth for far too many generations. 8 months after matters had been turned over to BSTE, the first trade group returned to Earth with a bewildering variety of artifacts and devices, plus a round dozen Argonauts. The Argonauts had learned to speak Solian with an amusing guttural accent. They beamed on everything and everybody. They were great pets until the novelty wore off. Profitable trade was inaugurated because the Argonaut devices all seemed designed to make life more pleasant. The synthesizer became very popular once it was adjusted to meet human tastes. Worn as a lapel button, it could create the odor of pine, broiled steak, spring flowers, Scotch whiskey, musk, even skunk for the practical jokers who exist in all ages and eras. Any home equipped with an Argonaut static clean never became dusty. It used no power and had to be emptied only once a year. technicians altered the Argonaut mechanical game animal so that it looked like an Earth rabbit. The weapons which shot a harmless beam were altered to look like rifles. After one experience with a new game, hunters were almost breathless with excitement. The incredible agility of the mechanical animal, its ability to take cover, the fact that, once the beam felled it, you could use it over and over again, all this made for the promulgation of new, non-lethal hunting. Lambert, chief of the Bureau of Racial Maturity, BRM, waited patiently for his chance at the Argonaut data. The cramped offices in the temporary wing of the old System Security Building, the meager appropriation, the obsolete office equipment, the inadequate staff all testified not only to the Bureau's lack of priority, but also to a lack of knowledge of its existence on the part of many system officials. Lambert, crag-faced, sandy, slow-moving, was a historian, anthropologist, and sociologist. He was realist enough to understand that if the Bureau of Racial Maturity happened to be more important in system government, it would probably be headed by a man with fewer academic and more political qualifications. And Lambert knew, beyond any doubt at all, that the BRM was more important to the race and the future of the race than any other branch of system government. Set up by President Tolis, an adult and enlightened administrator, the Bureau was now slowly being strangled by a constantly decreasing appropriation. Lambert knew that mankind had come too far, too fast. Mankind had dropped out of a tree with all the primordial instincts to render and tear and claw. 20,000 years later, and with only a few thousand years of dubiously recorded history, he had reached the stars. It was too quick. Lambert knew that mankind must become mature in order to survive. The domination of instinct had to be watered down, and rapidly. Selective breeding might do it, but it was an answer impossible to enforce. He hoped that one day the records of an alien civilization would give him the answer. After a year of bureaucratic wriggling, feints and counterfeints, he had acquired the right of access to scout group data. As his patience dwindled, he wrote increasingly firm letters to central files and routing. In the end, when he finally located the data improperly stored in the closed files of the BSTE, he took no more chances. He went in person with an assistant named Cooper and a commandeered electric hand truck and bullied a BSTE storage clerk into accepting a receipt for the Argonaut data. The clerk's cooperation was lessened by never having heard of the Bureau of Racial Maturity. The file contained the dictionary and grammar compiled by the scout group, plus all the films taken on the 3 planets of Argus 10, plus microfilms of 12,000 books written in the language of the Argonauts. Their written language was ideographic and thus presented more than usual difficulties. Lambert knew that translations had been made, but somewhere along the line they had disappeared. Lambert set his whole staff to work on the language. He hired additional linguists out of his own thin enough pocket. He gave up all outside activities in order to hasten the progress of his own knowledge. His wife, respecting Lambert's high order of devotion to his work, kept their 2 half-grown children from interfering during those long evenings when he studied and translated at home. 2 evenings a week, Lambert called on Vonk Pugla, the Argonaut assigned to trade coordination. and improved his conversational Argonian to the point where he could obtain additional historical information from the pink-wide man. Of the 12,000 books, the number of special interest to Lambert were only 110. On those he based his master chart. An animated film of the chart was prepared at Lambert's own expense, and when it was done, he requested an appointment with Simpkin, Secretary for Stellar Affairs, going through all the normal channels to obtain the interview. He asked an hour of Simpkin's time. It took 2 weeks. Simpkin was a big, florid man with iron-gray hair, skeptical eyes, and that indefinable look of political opportunism. He came around his big desk to shake Lambert's hand. "Ah, Lambert, glad to see you, fella. I ought to get around to my bureau chiefs more often, but you know how hectic things are up here." "I know, Mr. Secretary. I have something here of the utmost importance and—" "Bureau of Racial Maturity, isn't it? I never did know exactly what you people do. Sort of progress records or something?" "Of the utmost importance," Lambert repeated doggedly. Simpkin smiled. "I hear that all day, but go ahead." "I want to show you a chart. A historical chart of the Argonaut civilization." Lambert put the projector in position and plugged it in. He focused it on the wall screen. "It was decided," Simpkin said firmly, "that the Argonauts are not a menace to us in any—" "I know that, sir. Please look at the chart first, and then, when you've seen it, I think you'll know what I mean." "Go ahead," Simpkin agreed resignedly. "I can be accused of adding apples and lemons in this presentation, sir. Note the blank chart. The baseline is in years, adjusted to our calendar so as to give a comparison. Their recorded history covers 12,000 of our years. That's better than 4 times ours. Now note the red line. That shows the percentage of their total population involved in wars. It peaked 8,000 years ago. Note how suddenly it dropped after that. In 500 years, it sinks to the baseline and does not appear again. Here comes the second line. Crimes of violence. It also peaks 8,000 years ago. It drops less quickly than the war line and never does actually cut the baseline. Some crime still exists there, but a very, very tiny percentage compared to ours on a population basis, or to their own past. The third line, the yellow line climbing abruptly, is the index of insanity. Again, a peak during the same approximate period in their history. Again, a drop almost to the baseline. Simpkin pursed his heavy lips. Odd, isn't it? Now, this fourth line needs some explaining. I winnowed out death rates by age groups. Their lifespan is 1.3 times ours, so it had to be adjusted. I found a strange thing. I took the age group conforming to our 18 to 24 year group, that green line. Note that by the time we start getting decent figures, 9,000 years ago, it remains almost constant and at a level conforming to our own experience. Now note what happens when the green line reaches a point 8,000 years ago. See how it begins to climb? Now steeper, almost vertical. It remains at a high level for almost 1,000 years, way beyond the end of their history of war, and then descends slowly toward the baseline leveling out about 2,000 years ago." Lambert clicked off the projector. "Is that all?" Simpkin asked. "Isn't it enough? I'm concerned with the future of our own race. Somehow, the Argonauts have found an answer to war, insanity, violence. We need that answer if we are to survive." "Come now, Lambert," Simpkin said, wearily. "Don't you see it? Their history parallels ours. They had our same problems. They saw disaster ahead and did something about it. What did they do? I have to know that." "How do you expect to?" "I want travel orders to go there." "I'm afraid that's quite impossible. There are no funds for that sort of jaunt, Lambert, and I think you are worrying over nothing." "Shall I show you some of our own trends? Shall I show you murder turning from the most horrid crime into a relative commonplace? Shall I show you the slow, inevitable increase in asylum space?" "I know all that, man, but look at the Argonauts. Do you want that sort of stagnation? Do you want a race of fat, pink, sleepy—" "Maybe they had a choice. A species of stagnation or the end of their race. Faced with that choice, which would you pick, Mr. Secretary?" "There are no funds." "All I want is authority. I'll pay my own way." And he did. Reen was the home planet of the Argonauts, the third from their sun. When the trade ship flickered into three-dimensional existence 10,000 miles above Reen, Lambert stretched the space ache out of his long bones and muscles and smiled at Vonk Pugla. "You could have saved me the trip, you know," Lambert said. A grin creased the round pink visage. "Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Besides, only my cousin can speak about this thing you wonder about. My cousin is a very important person. He is the one who chose me to go to your planet." Vonk Pugla was transported with delight at being able to show the wonders of the ancient capital city to Lambert. It had been sacked and burned over 8,000 years before, and now it was mellowed by 83 centuries of unbroken peace. It rested in the pastel twilight, and there was laughter and soft singing in the broad streets. Never had Lambert felt such a warm aura of security and love. No other word but that ultimate one seemed right. In the morning, they went to the squat blue building where Vonk Subuknura, the important person, had his administrative headquarters. Lambert, knowing enough of Argonaut governmental structure to understand that Subuknura was titular head of the three-planet government, could not help but compare the lack of protocol with what he could expect were he to try to take Vonk Pugla for an interview with President Mize. Subuknura was a smaller, older edition of Pugla, his pink face wrinkled, his greening hair retaining only a trace of the original yellow. Subuknura spoke no Solian, and he was very pleased to find that Lambert spoke Argonian. Subuknura watched the animated chart with considerable interest. After it was over, he seemed lost in thought. "It is something so private with us, man Lambert, that we seldom speak of it to each other," Subuknura said in Argonian. "It is not written. Maybe we have shame, a guilt sense. That is hard to say. I have decided to tell you what took place among us 8,000 years ago."
I would be grateful.
live in contentment. Maybe it is good. Maybe it is not so good. But we continue to live. Where did our trouble come from in the old days, when we were like your race? Back when we were brash and young and wickedly cruel? From the individuals, those driven ones who were motivated to succeed despite all obstacles. They made our paintings, wrote our music, killed each other, fomented unrest, our wars. We live off the bewildering richness of our past. He sighed. It was a problem. To understand our solution, you must think of an analogy, man Lambert. Think of a factory where machines are made. We will call the acceptable machines stable, the unacceptable ones unstable. They are built with a flywheel which must turn at a certain speed. If it exceeds that speed, it is no good. But a machine that is stable can, at any time, become unstable. What is the solution? He smiled at Lambert. I'm a bit confused, Lambert confessed. You would have to go around inspecting the machines constantly for stability. And use a gauge? No. Too much trouble. An unstable machine can do damage. So we do this. We put a little governor on the machine. When the speed passes the safety mark, the machine breaks. But this is an analogy, Vank Subaknura, Lambert protested. You can't put a governor on a man. Man is born with a governor, man Lambert. Look back in both our histories when we were not much above the animal level. An unbalanced man would die. He could not compete for food. He could not organize the simple things of his life for survival. Man Lambert, did you ever have a fleeting impulse to kill yourself? Lambert smiled. Of course, you could almost call that impulse a norm for intelligent species. Did it ever go far enough so that you considered a method? A weapon? Lambert nodded slowly. It's hard to remember, but I think I did. Yes, once I did. And what would have happened, the Argonaut asked softly, if there had been available to you, in that moment, a weapon completely painless, completely final? Lambert's mouth went dry. I would probably have used it. I was very young. Wait, I'm beginning to see what you mean, but... The governor had to be built into the body, Subaknura interrupted, and yet so designed that there would be no possibility of accidental activation. Suppose that on this day I start to think of how great and powerful I am in this position I have. I get an enormous desire to become even more powerful. I begin to reason emotionally. Soon I have a setback. I am depressed. I am out of balance, you could say. I have become dangerous to myself and to our culture. In a moment of depression, I take these two smallest fingers of each hand. I reach behind me and I press the two fingers, held firmly together, to a space in the middle of my back. A tiny capsule, buried at the base of my brain, is activated, and I am dead within a thousandth part of a second. Vonk Pugla is the same. All of us are the same. The passing urge for self-destruction happens to be the common denominator of imbalance. We purged our race of the influence of the neurotic, the egocentric, the hypersensitive, merely by making self-destruction very, very easy. Then that death rate? At 18, the operation is performed. It is very quick and very simple. We saw destruction ahead. We had to force it through. In the beginning, the deaths were frightening. There were so many of them. The stable ones survived, bred, reproduced. A lesser but still great percentage of the next generation went, and so on, until now it is almost static. In Argonian, Lambert said hotly, "Oh, that sounds fine, but what about children? What sort of heartless race can plant the seed of death in its own children?" Never before had he seen the faintest trace of anger on any Argonaut face. The single nostril widened, and Subaknura might have raged if he had been on Earth. There are other choices, man Lambert. Our children have no expectation of being burned to cinder, blown to fragments. They are free of that fear. Which is the better love, man Lambert? I have 2 children. I couldn't bear to— Wait, Subaknura said. Think one moment. Suppose you were to know that when they reached the age of 18, both your children were to be operated on by our methods. How would that affect your present relationship to them? Lambert was, above all, a realist. He remembered the days of being too busy for the children, of passing off their serious questions with a joking or curt evasion, of playing with them as though they were young, pleasing, furry animals. "I would do a better job as a parent," Lambert admitted. "I would try to give them enough emotional stability so that they would never have that urge to kill themselves. But Anne is delicate, moody, unpredictable, artistic." Pugla and Subaknura nodded in unison. "You would probably lose that one. Maybe you would lose both," Subaknura agreed. "But it is better to lose more than half the children of a few generations to save the race." Lambert thought some more. He said, "I shall go back, and I shall speak of this plan and what it did for you. But I do not think my race will like it. I do not want to insult you or your people, but you have stagnated. You stand still in time." Vonk Pugla laughed largely. "Not by a damn sight. he said gleefully. Next year, we stop giving the operation. We stop for good. It was just 8,000 years to permit us to catch our breath before going on more safely. And what is 8,000 years of marking time in the history of a race? Nothing, my friend. Nothing.